Hi, this is John White, and I'm here today to answer some questions for a University of Exeter Grand Challenges podcast. It's titled Educating Against the Public Misconception of Veterans' Mental Health. So, I'm a former Royal Marines officer and I was injured in Afghanistan just coming up for 9 years ago. So, I've got 5 questions here to answer. I'll work through them one at a time. If you want to get in touch and ask any questions to me afterwards, you can do that through social media. You'll find me on Twitter and Instagram. My handle is at JohnWhite50, JONWHITE50. So the first question. Last year, the MOD launched an advertising recruitment campaign called This Is Belonging, working on improving media representation of the armed forces and therefore public perceptions. What, from your experience, are the biggest public misconceptions surrounding veterans? And do these misconceptions contribute to the mental health treatment gap for veterans? So this is really interesting for me. I think it's been written about quite a bit. There was a famous article a few years ago called something like Mad, Bad and Sad. And I think there is this perception out there, or certainly I as a veteran have this perception that others see all veterans as being mad, bad or sad. So we've got some issues related to our service, or that we're sort of bad individuals because of what we've done, or we're suffering depression because of what we've done. And you know what, I've been through some stuff in my career, and I don't think I'm suffering from any of those. I don't think I'm mad, bad or sad. In general, of course, I'm a human being. I have good days and bad days, and life throws all sorts of curveballs at you. It's not like I'm completely unemotional. So what does this mean? I think the contribution then to the mental health treatment gap, my thought is that maybe what you get is this meta belief. So we as veterans believe that this is how everyone else views us, and everything that is out there in terms of treatment is all related to post-traumatic stress disorder, because that's what everyone thinks we're suffering from. And therefore, if we've got something going on which isn't PTSD, then we're not going to engage with the services out there because we don't think that they're set up for whatever it is that we're suffering from. So that's my thoughts on that. The next question. Often soldiers like you are assumed to be tough, emotionally cut off, and able to cope with anything on your own. Do you feel that this has an impact on soldiers and veterans and maybe contributes to the mental health treatment gap? So I think it's interesting because the first sort of 2 parts of the statement there, the idea of being tough and emotionally cut off, you know what? There are times when we are required to be a little bit like that. And that's just part of the job. Yes, when bad things happen, we do mourn. We find a time to mourn. Sometimes it can't be there and then in the moment. It has to be a few hours or a few days later, and we will do it. But we also have to be quite strict about it and cut off, because often there are imminent threats that we have to deal with. And so the only way you can do that is by being a little bit tough and cutting out some of the emotions at time. However, I think the thing to say is there are processes in place that, after prolonged periods of having to do this, we have what we call decompression, to allow people to come back and kind of go through the catharsis of that emotion that's maybe been locked away for a while whilst on tour. And the second thing is, we certainly don't do it on our own. From day one of training, you join the military, you are put into teams and units, and that is always how you operate. We talk about actually never operating alone. the smallest unit you'll ever operate in is 2 people in most instances, and in terms of tribulations of service life, um, that's how we do it then as well. In terms then of the effects of that, the contribution to the mental health treatment gap, I do wonder if, a bit like the last one, it then creates a lack of engagement from our side. And maybe there's something about, we have this sense of pride, we have this meta belief about what other people think about us, and we think that they think that's a sign of strength, and therefore it's something we want to hold on to for our own pride. And maybe that could prevent people from then engaging with services that are out there to help them. But that's just my view. Or not even view, actually, it's just me running the question round in my head and thinking what might be going on there. The next question is 11% of veterans have PTSD, as opposed to 20% having other common mental health disorders and 13% with alcoholism. However, a strong public misconception is the assumption that most veterans with mental ill health suffer with PTSD. Have you ever experienced this misconception, and what is the impact it has had on you? So the first thing is, I'm quite surprised by those statistics. I think they seem very slightly high to me, and I'm not sure if they're being given in the right context or whether I'm reading them and understanding them out of context. But yeah, they just seem slightly high to me. I very definitely experienced this, and it is the most frustrating thing that I have experienced. And what it leads to is me not engaging with people and services when actually I need to. So for me, I've clearly been through a big trauma. I've also witnessed lots of other traumatic events. But for whatever reason, I seem to have walked away without suffering from PTSD. And people find that very hard to understand. I don't fully understand it myself. However, it is what it is. However, life goes on, and you get thrown some of the other challenges that life throws at you. You know, all the usual stresses and strains. And for me, when my marriage was breaking down, having people then turn round when I was depressed and stressed out about my marriage breakdown and say, we knew you weren't coping with your injuries and that you were hiding PTSD, was really unhelpful. And all it did was make me shut off even more, and I wouldn't tell people about what was going on in my personal life, when actually maybe it would have been helpful to talk to people. And so there's a real danger in people jumping to these conclusions and making assumptions that just because someone is having or maybe in a low mood and they have been in the services or seen something traumatic, it therefore must be PTSD. It's a dangerous thing to start diagnosing people when you don't really know what's going on. And so it's always one of my encouragements to anyone out there, unless you're a psychologist and you've had the chance to do a full assessment of someone, don't try and diagnose them. Question 4. The public and employers have perceived veterans as fairly unemployable. Considering mental and physical disabilities, as a veteran with disabilities yourself, what kind of effect might these perceptions have on your mental health and well-being? You know what? I disagree with that statement I think that there is a lot of businesses out there that see the value in having veterans, whether they have come out with mental or physical disabilities or not. They see the value of employing veterans, and there are lots of schemes in big companies out there actively recruiting veterans. And I've made a personal choice that I want to live a lifestyle whereby I don't work full time for anyone else. I'm my own boss, I run my own consultancy, and that works well for me. But I know people with very similar injuries to myself who do a perfectly good job at holding down full time employment, and they're seen as assets to their company. So, yeah, I'll be honest, I just don't agree with that statement. And then finally, general finishing note. If you were in charge of the MOD and had the opportunity to introduce one new idea for mental health treatment of veterans, what would it be? I don't actually have one new idea myself. I think the MOD at the moment is fairly forward thinking in this. Yes, they haven't got everything they'd like out there yet, but they're certainly looking into how they can improve mental health, how they can improve mental health across the board, in fact, as well as the provision of services. And as part of their mental health strategy, which is out there, mental health and wellbeing strategy, they have four phases in it, if you like, or four pillars, which is promote, prevent, detect, and treat. And there's been more and more work done in this promote and prevent space. Whether it's building resilience, whether it's getting people to engage with their mental health on a day-to-day basis, in the same way that you eat a healthy diet and exercise regularly, just to make yourself healthier, just to perform better, not necessarily to treat some sort of mental illness. And I think there's lots of value in that. And I think over the next couple of years, you'll see a lot of things come out from the Ministry of Defence. Will they be at the leading edge? Maybe not, but certainly I don't think they're behind the power curve in this area. It's something they're really actively looking into and trying to produce. So that's it from me. Just to say again, if anyone wants to get in touch with me and ask any questions, you can find me at JohnWhite50, JONWHITE50, on either Twitter or Instagram. Feel free to get in touch and ask any questions. Thank you very much.